To benefit beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Next, we will discuss the classic of filial piety in traditional Chinese culture. We have already covered everything up to and including chapter 6. The main focus was on the filial piety of the emperor, as well as that of high officials, feudal lords, scholars, and commoners. We have now finished discussing the 5 distinct types of filial piety. Today, we will begin with chapter 7, which is known as the chapter of the 3 powers. So, when we talk about traditional culture, some people may find it quite interesting and engaging, while others may genuinely see it as something quite different, especially those individuals who are more traditional Buddhists. They may only be willing to listen to certain specific practices from the exoteric and esoteric schools of Buddhism, or want to hear about the 5 great treatises, the luminous essence, and other such profound theoretical teachings. But when it comes to practical worldly knowledge, they might not be particularly interested or engaged. However, perhaps in our current contemporary era, having an understanding of both Eastern and Western cultural knowledge, as well as a comprehensive understanding of past history, future predictions, and the current situation, is still very much important. So for this particular occasion, we've also thoughtfully set aside some dedicated time for everyone to study together. During the entire process of learning, I personally feel that I should genuinely gain something valuable from it. On the one hand, no matter what treatise or scripture it is, studying is always beneficial, because after very carefully studying from a truly profound Buddhist perspective, one's faith, renunciation, and compassion can only increase and will not truly diminish because of studying. At least that's my very own experience, whether it was in the past, attending classes with other teachers, even with some scholars and intellectuals in the secular world. If you attend some of their lectures, it's still helpful to yourself through learning. Today, a master told me that this process of studying, he said a couple of days ago, we had a 10-day holiday, and that shouldn't be the case. In the future, someone should come and teach classes. I said, that's how you feel about it. But not everyone necessarily thinks in just exactly the same way. He said, no, if we don't study, it feels like if you go 2 or 3 days without watering, it's still okay. But if it's 6 or 7 days, it will wilt and dry up. For us too, if we go for 6 or 7 days without classes, it just doesn't work. Maybe it's just at the very beginning, since he's only been ordained for 3 years. I felt precisely the same way when I first became a monk. Back then, in the 2nd year here, it seemed like we were just hanging out outside. At that time, I felt it was such a waste of time. Because when you first become a monk and start practicing, you're still very enthusiastic and diligent, and you feel that human life is extremely precious. But after a period of 10 or 20 years, perhaps that kind of unwavering faith will decrease a little bit. But what you said is also true. Now, most Dharma friends are still willing to attend classes, study. Through studying, we can rein in some of our scattered thoughts, whether it's Dharma friends in the secluded mountains or those outside. If there were no classes, maybe even our nightly recitation of the King of Aspiration prayers would be missed by many people. The entire day would just pass by like that, let alone any serious studying. But if there is a structured class, generally speaking, especially for those individuals who truly love to learn, it might indeed be quite beneficial. Of course, for a very small number of people, they might feel differently, but that's normal. So I think including traditional culture maybe this year as well, together with everyone, if we incorporate it into Buddhist classes, some people might understand. Some may not understand, but that's okay too. After all, it is truly impossible for everything we do or say to be fully recognized and universally accepted by everyone. This has never, ever happened since ancient times, throughout all of history. Even the Buddha and Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, such great and remarkable beings who appeared in this world, when they turned the wheel of the sublime Dharma with Vajra-like speech. However, there were still many others who held quite different opinions. So I think that this particular class we're having at this time is also quite meaningful. So let's continue with chapter 7. Chapter 7 mainly focuses on, because we talked about the 5 types of filial piety. After finishing the 5 types of filial piety, here discusses the 3 powers. The 3 powers refer to heaven, earth, and humanity. We call it the unity of humanity and heaven. In Confucian thought, the principle of the unity of humanity and heaven appears. Actually, in Taoism, if you look at the Tao-Te-Ching, you can also see the idea of the unity of humanity and heaven is very important. Then, in Buddhist texts like the Abhidharmakosha, especially the Kalachakra Tantra, including some of the Dzogchen Tantras in Vajrayana Buddhism, the principle of the unity of humanity and heaven is discussed even more profoundly and analyzed in truly very great detail indeed. So regarding the principle of the unity of humanity and heaven, some young people might think, this is just a mere superstition, merely a traditional saying. So before even truly studying it, they scoff at it and completely dismiss it from their minds. But for someone who is truly wise, this particular approach is really quite unreasonable. Some of us might be young people, and perhaps the education they've received is only a modern education. Only some of what is currently being promoted in certain places, the specific kind of education advocated in many schools. But actually, the scope of education in schools is not very broad. Looking at human education from the broader perspective of the entire vast universe, it's actually quite narrow, as we can clearly see. If you rely solely and exclusively on what is completed within a typical school system, then even if you have obtained, say, a university or doctoral degree, your title may be truly impressive, but the actual knowledge that resides within you, can it really be truly called great? That's quite hard to say indeed. So we should absolutely and completely let go of all our arrogance and pretensions. Even if you have completed many academic achievements in the world, you should still let go of them. From the perspective of Buddhism, whether it's some Dharma teachers, Khenpos, Khenmos, Geshes, or even some Geshemas, now there's the term Geshema. I'm not saying it wrong, so you don't need to laugh. Khenmo and Geshema, right? One is Mo and the other is Ma. So whether it's a Geshema or a Geshe, these truly great spiritual masters should also learn to let go of their own inherent arrogance. I have personally met many individuals who are incredibly famous and widely well known. It seems that once someone becomes famous, their way of looking at people, sitting, and even their tone of voice all change completely. For someone like me, who tends to observe and often notices others' faults, it's immediately and quite obviously clear, oh, this particular person, although they certainly have some fame, but is their arrogance even greater than their fame? They truly have this attitude of looking down on everyone. People like this really aren't very admirable. Actually, even when I reflect on the knowledge I have within myself, it's extremely limited, and there's really absolutely nothing to be truly proud of. Compared to some truly great masters and great scholars, if you make a comparison, I truly am not worth mentioning and can't compare to them at all. Therefore, among certain groups of people, say 100 people, or even if several hundred or several thousand people respect you, it's really nothing remarkable. So we should let go of all these pretenses that become obstacles for ourselves and devote ourselves wholeheartedly to learning. For each of us, this process of learning is just as essential as water and sunlight are to flowers. From beginning to end, what we humans always need is a love for learning. Some people, like some of us here now, for example, pass the civil service exam, become teachers, attain the title of Khenpo or Khenmo. After that, they stop learning, thinking they've already become enlightened, or that they've already earned their diploma. Look, this diploma is pretty impressive. From then on, but actually for them, this diploma becomes an obstacle. Before they had the diploma, before they passed the exam, they studied every day. But once they pass the exam, their learning comes to a halt. This title for them becomes a kind of obstacle. I've seen this before, even with some students I've often helped. Some Tibetan students, for example, used to be especially eager to learn. When they were in school, they were always holding a book in their hands, studying everything from astronomy and geography to worldly and spiritual teachings. But once they attained a certain status or recognition, they basically stopped looking at any kind of knowledge. This probably isn't a good thing. Loving to learn is very important. There is indeed so very much to learn. So today, let us learn something new together. So what is learning? When learning, we should always have a sense of joy and certainly not feel pressured. whether you're teaching others, listening attentively to someone else, or just reading quietly by yourself. Perhaps in our lives, the thing we enjoy most is, as many people think, the pleasures of the five senses. But I think that perhaps through learning both worldly and transcendent knowledge, for you, this truly should be the most happiest thing in life. So next, let's talk about this profound statement. Zhengzi once said, "How truly great is filial piety." Here, the classic of filial piety should be a dialogue between Confucius and his disciples, because Zhengzi and Confucius often had conversations. It's just like the dialogues between the Buddha and Ananda, or Maudgalyayana. So when Zhengzi said, "How great," it was a very heartfelt exclamation. How rare, or amazing. It's truly extraordinary. Didn't we discuss the 5 types of filial piety? This filial piety is truly magnificent. Why do I say this? In the past, we might have thought filial piety was respecting parents. He never considered it on the emperor's level or other high officials and nobles. We never thought about the 5 types of filial piety this way. So in a sense, even Zhengzi felt it was very rare. Wow, everyone used to think that being filial to one's parents is enough. But in fact, this filial piety is truly magnificent. Its meaning is truly all-encompassing and boundless in depth. He was quite deeply moved by how rare it was. At this point, Confucius went a step further and spoke to him again. Confucius said, "Filial piety is the principle of heaven, the righteousness of earth, and the proper conduct of all the people." Confucius responded to him by saying, "The so-called filial piety, in actual fact, has a much broader and more profound meaning. Moreover, it aligns with the laws of heaven and humanity, the laws of heaven and humanity." We often talk about the principles of heaven and the righteousness of earth, and it carries this meaning as well. That is, it is something that is natural and right, the principles of heaven and the righteousness of earth. So what does this mean? It is the principle of heaven. This principle means it conforms to the laws of heaven. Heaven, according to the Abhidharma Kosha, is unobstructed, whether you call it the void or something else. In ancient times, some people thought of heaven as a different kind of life system. There are such interpretations as well. But here we are essentially referring to the heaven above us. Heaven is among all things in the natural world. Its laws, its natural principles, are in perfect harmony with this. Then, for the righteousness of earth, the natural laws of the earth are also very fitting and reasonable. So this concept of filial piety, on one hand, it aligns with the laws of heaven, the principles of heaven above. Secondly, it is also in perfect harmony with the laws of the earth. Thirdly, it is the conduct of the people. That is, filial piety exists among all things between heaven and earth. Our human conduct, the way people behave, that is to say, moral conduct, the practice of filial piety, is also in perfect harmony. At the beginning, he explained this profound principle in a relatively simple and straightforward way. This principle, some people might think that so-called filial piety is just a concept from feudal society. Now that we are in the 21st century, everyone is equal. So why talk about filial or unfilial at all? Parents and children are truly equal, and so too are teachers and students indeed. And then leaders and those being led are also equal. This kind of thinking and these kinds of statements do exist, especially when I was younger. At that time, many social trends and directions were different. Back then, all these traditional and cultural concepts and fundamental ideas were basically overthrown, labeled as feudal thinking. Just the day before yesterday, I was looking at a political notebook from my middle school days. Compared to now, I had answered more than 40 questions back then. For example, one of the questions was about the smashing of the Gang of Four. There were a lot of things in there, and I took a look myself. I couldn't help but laugh when I read that political notebook by myself. Times do change, and back then, for example, nowadays we talk about how to promote, inherit, and spread traditional culture. This mindset, compared to back then, back in the 70s and 80s, I should have graduated from junior high in 1982, so this was before that. It must have been a notebook from my 3rd year of junior high. I flipped through it, and it was quite interesting. Even though things are so different now, in other words, the fundamental rules of this entire world have changed a little bit. But nowadays, many people also think that if everything is equal, then who should be filial to whom? Who should serve whom? This kind of thinking. Actually, some of these ideas nowadays are sometimes influenced by the impact of Western culture or its influence. Many of us truly know that now we often talk about the concept of equality for all people. But equality for all also genuinely requires wisdom to carefully analyze. Why exactly is that the case? Because a lot of Western ideas about equality actually come from Christianity. because much of Western culture is profoundly based upon the principles of Christianity. In Christianity, they firmly believe that all human beings are wonderfully created by God. Whether it's parents or children, on the surface it's like this. But in reality, all are created by God. So if God created them, then in terms of their rights and obligations, they are completely equal. It's not like with animals or others. There is a concept of equality. So in this way, sometimes we end up having an overly or somewhat excessive interpretation of it. Now, many young people also feel that there's no real difference between me and my parents or between me and my teachers. It's just that the teacher might be a bit older and I might be a bit younger. They hold this kind of belief, but this isn't necessarily reasonable. In some respects, it's not appropriate. So in this case here, it simply says, law of heaven, righteousness of earth, conduct of people, natural law. What it means is when we practice filial piety, it aligns with the natural order of heaven and earth and the concept of the unity of all things under heaven and earth. To put it more briefly or to summarize, it is the law of heaven and earth and the people follow it. So the fundamental principles of heaven and earth that govern, because in the sky there are the sun, the moon, and the stars. The radiant brightness of the sun, the luminous moon, and the twinkling stars. Our beautiful earth carries and sustains all living things. All things in the world can rely on the nourishment of heaven and earth and on the nurturing and support of the earth. So there is such a law, and people also have such a standard to follow, taking filial piety as a standard, heaven and earth in fact. Actually, heaven and earth also profoundly embody the deep meaning of filial piety, because for us, if you carefully look at the glorious sun, the radiant moon, and the countless stars in the vast sky, in fact, they consistently bring forth light and brilliant illumination to all living things. They are beneficial and they also give of themselves. They also bring us the profound meaning of filial piety. And as for the earth, if there were no earth, we wouldn't be able to attend classes. We wouldn't be able to walk. Without the earth, we couldn't grow essential crops. We couldn't even build sturdy houses. So truly, the earth is the fundamental place upon which all things depend. It also consistently brings us these invaluable benefits. For this very reason, in actual fact, the rules of filial piety for all people are truly no different from those for heaven, earth, and indeed all things. Now let us proceed to explain this concept in much greater detail. Thus, the brightness of heaven, the benefits of earth, and following the way of the world. Whether it's a king or a monarch, how should a ruler practice filial piety? They should follow the principles of heaven and earth. They should use these standards and rules to practice filial piety and conform to the world. How do they conform to the world? By embodying the brightness of heaven. The brightness of the sun, moon, and stars in the sky benefits all things and dispels the darkness of the world. As mentioned earlier, the earth not only nourishes us but also supports us. At the same time, it provides the foundation and function for the survival of all living things. So by combining the benefits of the earth with the brightness of the heavens, in the same way a ruler should also follow the will of the people, the hearts of all the people under heaven. Actually, traditional culture in ancient times may look simple in its characters, but in reality its content is quite profound. It's not just about telling us to respect our parents properly. It's not as simple as some of the rules for elementary and middle school students today, like respecting teachers, not smoking, not drinking. It's not just about those things. So for all rulers, no matter what kind of ruler you truly are, or what kind of person you may be, even if you are not a king, not a high official, not the absolute top leader of any particular place, still, everyone can consider themselves their own ruler. Every wise ruler should truly emulate the brilliant radiance of the heavens above to dispel the darkness in the hearts of all beings, both oneself and others. In the same way, we should take the benefit of the earth as an example and use that power to help others to bear the suffering of all beings. We should remove all adverse conditions and obstacles for sentient beings and provide countless beings with a place of refuge. If we follow the ways of this world, if we follow these principles, if we go along with what people say, then that is true filial piety. In fact, this not only aligns with the laws of nature, but also with the rules that people follow today. Even more, it aligns with the meaning and principles of our existence. In this way, whether we really live in this world truly, so live among human communities, we will have a brighter future. Therefore, the power of filial piety is something everyone should understand on a deeper level, or rather, we should discuss it from the perspective of broad benefit. If we approach filial piety, or this profound kind of radiance, with a mindset of truly benefiting others with its illuminating light, then, therefore, in fact, this is something that society truly and deeply needs for its well-being. Whether you are a monastic practitioner or a layperson, you should always maintain a genuinely kind and compassionate heart. I distinctly recall seeing in one of the profound teachings from the revered Kyabje Chokni Rinpoche, where it states, "Recite Avalokiteshvara's mantra with your mouth, harbor kindness in your heart, circumambulate and prostrate with your body, and turn the Avalokiteshvara mantra wheel with your hands."
立即相当固然级，就是身体呢，就是做这个转绕和定力。然后lucky marna chunkur kur.
At that time, it seems he was giving some advice to a group of women just sharing a teaching. I clearly remember that in this specific teaching, it was explained precisely like this. If you always keep kindness in your heart, then your mind is good and your path is a good one. If your mind is truly evil, your path is also evil, just as Master Tsongkhapa wisely taught. Our future will gradually and certainly improve. This also applies to a monarch. When truly governing a country, using this method is the best approach. There was a famous historical work called The Comprehensive Mirror to Aid in Government. The Comprehensive Mirror to Aid in Government. At that time, many great figures in China especially loved to study it. They would even study it every day, reading the book and so on. This book analyzes history, unlike some of our current history books. It doesn't just state when a certain dynasty began and when it ended. It's not like that. The way it analyzes things is, it looks at why each dynasty flourished and why it eventually fell. It discusses in detail how each monarch governed the country. Among them, it talks about Emperor Taizong of Tang. Yes, when it comes to Emperor Taizong of Tang. At that time, it seemed that in many parts of the country, banditry was rampant. Things were being stolen every day. Something would go missing here today and something else would be gone there tomorrow. When many ministers discussed the matter among themselves, many of them believed that harsh and severe punishments were necessary. They suggested things like beheading or cutting off limbs as ways to govern. But later, the emperor at that time carefully analyzed the problem. When he analyzed the issue, he said, "Why are there more and more thieves in the world these days? Indeed. The reason should be that there are too many corrupt officials now, and people's taxes are too high. Many people truly don't have enough to eat or wear. Life is a great deal difficult for them indeed. Because of this, people have no way to survive." So the whole social atmosphere has become chaotic because of this. At that time, he said, "The harsh punishments we have now are actually unreasonable. We should start with ourselves, and in the future, we should elect honest officials. Try to reduce corruption as much as possible and save resources. And then do everything humanly possible to lower taxes, bring about improvements to people's lives and their overall benefits, and carefully adjust some policies to be distinctly different from before." A mere few years later, there were indeed earth-shaking changes. People didn't have to lock their doors at night, and no one picked up lost items on the road. At night, there was no need to close your doors. If something was lost on the road during the day, no one would steal it. Even some traveling merchants who slept outdoors at night were not robbed at all. The entire country was exceptionally peaceful and secure. At that time, society had already become like this. Later, the ruler at the time also said, "It really is like this. As long as people have enough to eat and wear, and as people's overall morals continue to improve, public security in society will naturally get better. So whether it is a country or an ethnic group, no matter where it is located, of course, there may be other additional significant reasons for public order and safety. But if the ruler is truly wise and the people are actively striving for goodness and they fundamentally solve their own inherent problems, then many significant social problems will also be easily and effectively resolved. So sometimes, when we observe that certain aspects of social discipline are not particularly good, on the one hand, we may indeed need to examine the underlying root causes. If these fundamental root causes are resolved, then perhaps the entire overall social atmosphere and societal conduct will change, as we have just mentioned. As a ruler, one should follow the clarity of heaven and the advantages of earth to adapt to the times and conform to the world. Sometimes even in some Dharma centers or within certain groups, all kinds of issues arise. Even something as small as a lack of proper discipline within a classroom environment, or perhaps the people inside have a bad attitude when all sorts of things happen. Some people may just keep punishing others repeatedly, constantly losing their temper, always focusing on others' faults. But in reality, if the problem lies with oneself, whether as a ruler or in our own management practices, perhaps the root issue could actually be fully resolved. This is one approach. Therefore, by following the laws of heaven and earth in the future, there will surely be many eminent monks and great figures among you, future great individuals, whether you govern a country or manage a family in the future. In fact, a family is also like a small country, and managing your own monastery is the same. At such times, we will encounter all kinds of situations. Some people who haven't faced many challenges before seem to become extremely fragile when they encounter even a small problem. They can't withstand any setbacks and say they're about to collapse. They immediately want to give up or even contemplate suicide. Nowadays, because of many movies and TV shows, it seems that whenever something happens, the first option people consider is whether to commit suicide. Actually, this is very bad. You shouldn't even think about suicide. No need for it. The world is so beautiful. After suicide, will your problems really be solved? Will you truly be happy? No one can indeed guarantee that. We have a saying, for people who often think about suicide, the demons of suicide will come to them. For example, when there is some rotting meat, certain insects will naturally be attracted by the smell and come over. In the same way, if we humans lack good thoughts and harbor evil intentions, and if you keep having these negative thoughts like, I want to commit suicide, and think about it often, sometimes the Lord of Death or spirits of the dead ghosts will come. Just like when a corpse appears and vultures circle, it's the same idea. If you think, oh, today something happened, I lost something, it's really over now, should I commit suicide? And then nowadays, some of us really do suffer from anxiety and depression. A characteristic of depression is frequently having suicidal thoughts. But in this case, I think as practitioners, there may be no need to dwell on such thoughts. Perhaps for some, it really is a manifestation of karma. Maybe you killed someone in a past life or things in the past, and there's nothing you can do about it. When karma manifests, nothing can be done. But in many cases, you can resolve it by adjusting your own mindset. Especially for those who practice Buddhism, I've met many such people who used to often think about suicide or frequently had a negative mindset later after encountering Buddhism. Even if they experienced physical suffering, their minds seemed to be very healthy. If our minds are healthy, then even if our physical health isn't great, we should still be able to endure it. But if there are already problems with our minds, if our minds are unhealthy, then no matter how good our physical health is, it won't help. In the end, problems will still arise. Therefore, the health of both body and mind is important for every practitioner, and even for those who don't believe in any religion. Adjusting one's mindset is very important. Adjusting our mindset, telling myself, I can't commit suicide, I can't have this pain and distress. Even if I talk to myself like this, it doesn't really solve any problems. So what use solve problems? Rely theory, causes, conditions, practice, meditation, reciting mantras. There are many aspects, and they're effective, especially when praying, when the mind is disturbed. Praying to Guru Rinpoche or Tara truly has a tremendous effect. Sometimes when you're not in a good mood, you can simply just settle your mind and then sincerely pray to your teacher, pray to Guru Rinpoche, truly. And many of the shadows in your mind, just like when sunlight shines everywhere, will naturally disappear, just like darkness is completely dispelled. So what exactly is this? This is precisely the principle we've just discussed. Next, let's continue with the line. Therefore, his teaching is effective without being strict, and his governance is orderly without being harsh. Just now, based on the laws and rules of the universe, to protect all of these related people's words, then with this kind of monarch, his education is not serious. No need to be particularly serious, like the death penalty or life imprisonment or cutting off hands and feet. There is no need to be so serious or harsh in punishment. His policies and politics simply don't need to be so harsh. Such harsh and brutal methods of governance are indeed not necessary. Because in the world, in fact, its nonviolence prevails. In the past, Gandhi of India was an advocate of peace and nonviolence. He said that all the violence and conflict in the world, actually they stem from our competitiveness and our anger. So his religion was not Buddhism, but in reality he still strongly advocated peace and compassion. Here it is also said that if a person possesses such love or has such filial piety, then their education does not require punishment. In fact, punishment is truly a bad thing. Some teachers in our schools often hit students and use extremely cruel methods. But sometimes when we try to persuade them, they say, no, these children won't listen. Only by hitting them will it work. Some time ago, there was a kindergarten teacher who kicked the children with his foot. As a result, the photo was posted online. Then there was a lot of discussion on the internet. Actually, the kick wasn't very hard. It was just a little bit. It was simply that someone put it online. But in fact, whether in Han areas or Tibetan areas nowadays, many schools are indeed much more cruel than this particular one by many, many times. Such truly cruel and inhumane practices leave a deep shadow in the hearts of the students' minds. In the end, it seems that even after they grow up, the whole world and everything in it brings them a sense of fear. They may even feel that a gentle breeze from nature is somehow harming them. Or when they hear the calls of birds, they feel as if the birds are mocking or scolding them. There are cases like this. So from a young age, it's important to leave love in their hearts, to leave compassion and care. That way, when they grow up, whether it's towards society or their family, they will possess these valuable qualities. It will greatly bring great benefits to their personal life. That's why in many schools, including some Buddhist institutes, it is recommended to use the method of love to maintain harmony in the world. This is the religious meaning taught by Shakyamuni Buddha, our original teacher, because the Buddha never needed weapons to subdue sentient beings, right? This way of governing is to rule without harshness. It is best to use compassion to manage your own monastery, to govern your own country, or to lead your own group. Ideally, we should still use compassion, whether it's managing one's own monastery or country, or our own group. These are all very good approaches. Last year, we went to some countries in Europe and North America, and even if someone becomes a terrorist there, they are not sentenced to death. The situation in every country in the world is different. But in Buddhism, no matter how serious a mistake someone makes, not sentencing them to death is one of their rules. When we went to visit, it seemed that the most serious prisoners, there were 12 of them, 12 people, were held in a rather special and secluded prison where they couldn't see anyone else at all. As for the others, the prison was quite comfortable. They could drink coffee, read books. When we went inside, it seemed there were a few university chatting there. Everyone was like that. But then I asked, would it be the case that after being locked up for decades, would the effect be good when they got out? They said it was actually quite good. In that kind of environment, they let them study, allowing them to learn all kinds of knowledge. So now prisons around the world are also different from before. Maybe in the last century, every country had some. Now, internationally as well, all those who are imprisoned in jails are managed in a relatively better way, which might be a bit more effective. But in reality, the adjustment of a person's inner self is not something that can be solved by force. There's a case in the Vinaya Sutra, and it's also mentioned in the precepts. At that time, King Prasenajit, what was he called? He should be King Pasenadi. When he was in power, it seems it was during his time in Rajagriha. Once he went to see the Buddha and respectfully bowed to him. Then the Buddha asked, "You are such a great king. Why do you use your body to bow to me in this way?" He replied, "I am not only showing respect to you with my body, my heart is also especially respectful toward you." Then the Buddha asked, "Why are you so respectful to me?" And the king said, "You know, Buddha, right now this entire country is ruled by me alone. My power is such that I stand above tens of thousands of people. As for all of the numerous people residing within this entire country, if I want any one of them to die, it is an easy thing. It's entirely in my hands. If some people here break the law and I don't want them to die, if I want them to live, I also have that power. My authority has already reached such a level, standing above tens of thousands. But sometimes when discussing matters in court, even though my status and position are so high, the people below me sometimes show their displeasure in their attitude and demeanor. When we watch some of those palace movies, the ministers below all have, maybe they're acting on purpose, all kinds of different expressions just like that. Many people are dissatisfied. They have such emotions and attitudes. This time I saw your followers spreading the Dharma. There were many remarkable kings, ministers, humans and non-humans, tens of thousands of sentient beings. But all of them listened with very great respect and reverence. Some even dared not cough, even if they needed to. If someone spoke in a very low voice, the person next to them would say, "Don't speak loudly." Moreover, everyone were listening to the teachings with an attitude and expression full of joy and respect. So what is the reason for this? It is the Buddha's prestige. It comes from his power, which is truly inconceivable. It is not achieved through swords, clubs, or any kind of weapon, not through the force or intimidation of weapons. Therefore, the Buddha's way of guiding sentient beings, I am sincerely convinced and deeply admire it. That is why today, my respect for you is not just physical, but also comes from my heartfelt reverence. This is the reason why. In fact, from this story, we can truly see that sometimes if we rely solely on so-called management philosophies or use political education to forcibly bind your mind to a certain ideology or way of thinking, it can be quite difficult. But if we genuinely have a deep sense of love for everyone and foster a strong sense of trust or security, then people's hearts will naturally come together. Some Dharma teachers are like this as well. For example, whether it's for the sake of their own followers or their own class, they insist on developing things by criticizing in various ways. And as a result, their followers become fewer and fewer. But if today you buy some candy and tomorrow for each student, some of our teachers are like this. I've seen some teachers. The main reason so many students really like them is that they often not only give the gift of Dharma, but also material gifts. As for material giving, it doesn't have to be anything big. For each person, maybe at lunchtime you buy something. A bowl of cold noodles or vermicelli or something like that. Aren't we talking about the 6 perfections and the 4 means of attraction? It doesn't have to be harsh punishment. Today, I demand you stand for 3 hours. Tomorrow, you have to write a self-criticism, and the day after that, you have to. Nowadays, some of our methods for punishing students are just about hitting them. This particular approach might actually work better for a select few individuals, but for the vast majority of people, we should persuade them according to the Mahayana Buddhist principle of love. This is about governing without harshness, and it's very important. This was also the spirit of the Buddha. Buddhism has some methods of transforming sentient beings through love. We need to fully understand this. That's precisely what is being said here. Next, it talks about this. The ancient kings saw that teaching could truly transform the people. Here, the so-called ancient kings, these figures, refers to those wise rulers and kings of the past who have already left this world. These ancient kings discovered that the way to educate sentient beings or to guide the common people was actually explained through the following 5 aspects. By using these methods, they could transform or educate the people. They could educate their citizens. So throughout history, these kings and wise rulers did not rely solely on violence. Look at the meaning of the classic of filial piety. I think it actually aligns quite well with the Mahayana Buddhist concept of compassion. But perhaps, as I just noticed, there are many different interpretations of it. And the methods of interpretation might be a bit different from mine, but I think interpreting it this way is also acceptable. I'm interpreting it in conjunction with Buddhism. Perhaps some teachers and professors of traditional culture among you feel that my method of interpretation is incorrect. You can say so directly. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a free forum. I think the way I explain it makes sense. And if you think your way of explaining it also makes sense if I say something wrong, maybe I could also find a few minor flaws in your words. We can indeed do it this way, and that's quite a good approach. Now, as for the ancient sages and kings, the methods they used to educate the people, as I mentioned earlier, they used the laws of heaven and earth to guide and transform people. There are 5 distinct methods, and the very first is, therefore they began with universal love, so that the people would not neglect their own kin. First of all, these ancient sages and kings used universal love, compassion, care, and kindness. They started by guiding their people with these virtues. In this particular way, the people would certainly not forget their own beloved relatives and cherished friends and their important connections, and most importantly, their own parents. They would not abandon nor forget them. This is indeed the most effective method. If we were to use violence or attempt to teach through other, less suitable means, it would most likely not be very reasonable or productive. Therefore, he used love. You see, here again, in Mahayana Buddhism, we use love to care for all sentient beings, including our own parents. In fact, we really need to have this kind of love for our parents. If you have a truly loving heart, then you won't abandon your elderly parents, nor will you abandon your relatives or the people around you. I really think that among those of us present attending this lecture today, some may have already lost their parents, while others may still be alive. But no matter what, I still hope that we use our love to care for our parents regularly. After studying the classic of filial piety this time, if your attitude toward your parents is different from before, that's a very good thing. Otherwise, sometimes after our parents have passed away, there may be many regrets. Sometimes both of my parents have already passed away. It seems that in daily life, I often think of them. Oh, that's what my father used to say. Oh, that's what my mother used to say. It feels like after they are gone, there are even more. If they were still here, I should have a chat with them. If they were here, it would. Some time ago, I would think about that because my father passed away in 1995. Afterwards, it seemed like I couldn't find it in my memory anymore. There used to be a photo. A couple of days ago, I kept searching and searching and finally found it. It seems like there's only one photo left. Sometimes when it comes to the people closest to us, when you miss them, you can only rely on a single photo or a small gift. At times like this, it seems we recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra. Some time ago, I also mentioned this on Weibo. If they are still alive, we should be filial to them. If they're no longer here, we can use the Avalokiteshvara mantra to comfort ourselves. This should be a very good way. But it's not as good as when they're still in this world. Sometimes we really should spend some time with them. Now, I sometimes think, oh, if my parents were still here, at the very least, I should spend some time with them, just to talk about our stories from the past. But now, in this modern world, it's not just people. You can't even find a single strand of hair. So if we truly use love to maintain our precious relationships, in fact, this is the best way to show filial piety. It's not just about our own parents. Actually, this kind of love is also very important between other human beings and deeply within families. There are often conflicts within families these days. Conflicts are inevitable because when it comes to family, every sentient being, for example, if there are 4 people in my family, all 4 are sentient beings, people with different karmas are gathered together. There are bound to be different viewpoints and frequent conflicts. At first, many people think there definitely won't be any conflicts at all, but as time goes on, the conflicts become more and more intense. This happens too. So at such times, using the kind of love taught in Buddhism to try to resolve any conflicts is very important. This applies not only between individuals, but also between nations. In fact, even if wars truly break out, this too should be resolved through peace. This is something that we don't have in Tibetan Buddhism, but in the miscellaneous Treasures Sutra, as well as in Theravada and Han Buddhism, it is present. There is a story in it, which also reflects Buddhism's attitude toward war. In the past, there were 2 kings, and their countries were on the verge of war. During the war, one country had elephants, because in ancient times, elephants were mainly used in wars to destroy the enemy. One country had elephants, while the other did not. Then the king issued an order to everyone in the country, saying that whoever found an elephant would receive a great reward. So during their diligent search, they eventually discovered an ancient elephant king in a majestic mountain. And this elephant king was extremely wise. It could have easily escaped if it wanted to, but its parents were already old and blind, so it had no choice but to stay and not leave. Later, when the people searching for elephants caught it, they brought it to the royal palace. When it finally arrived at the royal palace, the king was truly overjoyed. He exclaimed, "Wow, such a magnificent elephant. It must be formidable in battle. Take good care of it." They even built a special palace just for it. They served it with all kinds of music and food. But at that time, the elephant refused to eat or drink. Back then, animals could understand human language. The king asked, "Why won't you eat or drink?" It replied, "My parents are still in the mountains and no one is taking care of them." Actually, the origin of this story should be that Buddha spoke about giving to parents sick and guests afar. He talked about 8 kinds of giving, that there are 8 types of people to give to. Then the disciples asked, "Why do you often emphasize giving to parents and being filial? Why is it so important?" Then the Buddha said, "Not only in this lifetime. In this life, I am so filial to my parents. In fact, even in my previous lives when I was reborn as an animal, I was just as good to my parents as I am right now. And that's precisely how this entire story truly began. At that time, the monks asked, "What was it like in your previous life?" He then told the story of the war between the 2 countries. And then, as mentioned earlier, the elephant said to the king, "No one is taking care of my parents, so I have no interest in eating." The majestic elephant made an important request to the king. It said, "Can I not go to battle for now? I want to take care of my parents. They probably don't have much time left. After they pass away, I will definitely come down and help you fight in the war." After hearing the elephant's words, the king, who was also very wise, was very pleased and said, "You are absolutely right. Being filial to one's parents is very important. I will issue an order. Everyone in the country must be filial to their parents. If anyone is not filial, I will impose severe punishment." He also agreed to let the elephant go into the mountains to take care of its parents. Then the elephant went back to care for its parents, but they had already passed away. After that, it returned to the palace. The king requested, "Now our 2 countries are about to go to war. You should help me go and fight them now." At this point, the elephant said, "Your Majesty, is it possible not to fight? If we go to war like this, both sides will be greatly harmed. Many sentient beings will truly be hurt, whether we ultimately win or lose." Then the king said, "Not fighting is not an option. If we don't fight, they will attack us. In that case, what if we lose? Everything we have will be destroyed." Then it said, "Let me go to the other side and try to persuade them. I should have a way." But the king was uneasy. "What if you go and you don't come back?" It replied, "I won't. I'm trustworthy. Just like people in the West say, I am honest and have integrity." "I would never lie. Your Majesty, you can rest assured." Then he agreed. The king was actually quite good, not like nowadays when people are so suspicious. Then the king sent it over to the other side, and the elephant began to negotiate with them. It started to talk to them, saying, "Even if you win, it doesn't really mean anything. And if you lose, it doesn't mean much either." At that time, it recited a verse saying, "Victory breeds more resentment, defeat brings only sorrow." The meaning is, even if you win a war, it only leads to endless hatred. If you fail, your suffering will only increase. Even now, just between tribes, losing is extremely painful. So, the greatest happiness is for those who do not contend over victory or defeat. If we don't fight, if we don't compete for victory or defeat, if we can resolve things peacefully, then that kind of happiness is the best. At that time, it explained this to them. You could truly say it was giving a teaching. Everyone should always remember this verse. It's also very important. Indeed, it's a fundamental Buddhist idea. Some people say that we must go to war. When I visit some schools, some people say, if we don't fight, what if the other side destroys us? Actually, we should carefully and thoughtfully resolve things in a peaceful way. Resolving differences and disputes peacefully is very important, because even if you win, you may think you've won. But if you kill the other side definitely won't give up. They will keep trying to harm you. If I lose, I won't be happy either. On a larger scale, conflicts between countries can also be like this. On a smaller scale, when two people argue, it doesn't really matter who wins or loses, right? In Tibet, we have a very old and wise saying. When there's an argument at home, the wife wins the argument, but the husband wins the fight. Because in a physical fight, the husband will definitely win. But when it comes to arguing, many women just keep going and going. In the end, the men have no way out. It's better to resolve things peacefully. In a family, problems should be solved with love. The second point, promote virtue and righteousness, and the people will follow. The second point is that whether it's a king or a ruler, they should explain the importance of morality. By actively promoting such morality, in fact, the people's behavior will become more virtuous and good. This is very important because if the ruler is really able to, indeed, in the story just now, there was a line that said, in the end, the two countries didn't go to war. After they didn't go to war, the elephant mentioned earlier was actually a previous life of Shakyamuni Buddha before he attained enlightenment. He always used this verse to mediate conflicts among sentient beings. So therefore, as Buddhists, we should always indeed remember these words. That's to supplement what was just discussed. Now, moving on, promote virtue and righteousness, and the people will follow. We often talk about morality, and when we do, people's behavior will tend toward goodness. Especially if the ruler or king speaks about morality, then everyone under them will also speak about morality. As stated in the Discourse on the Teachings for Rulers, furthermore, it is undeniably true that whatever good or evil actions, whether virtuous or wicked, the king or ruler performs, all their loyal followers will inevitably imitate them, and consequently, their collective actions will very easily become precisely the same. We've talked about this before. If the ruler says something, their followers will also say it. For example, if the ruler of a country talks about the standards for being a good student and child, then everyone under them will talk about the standards for being a good student and child. If teachers at a school talk about morality, everyone below will follow their example. So, in today's modern world, rulers should still be highly valued and respected. Whatever actions he undertakes, those below him will undoubtedly do the same. Therefore, when we consistently demonstrate virtue and moral uprightness, the behavior of the people will also change accordingly and positively. This is the second method. In other words, whether it's their way of guiding and transforming others, or the method of teaching filial piety, this is the second approach. Now, the third method is lead with respect and humility, and the people will not compete. If, as a ruler, you first genuinely practice mutual tolerance and respect, and then begin to truly help each other in this significant way, then the people will not quarrel. This is also a very good method. Otherwise, if no one is willing to tolerate or yield to each other, then you hit me, I hit you, you hate me, I hate you. You impose tariffs of 50 billion, I impose tariffs of 50 billion. In this way, there will be endless disputes on both sides. Everyone is the same. If you hate me, I hate you. People all over the world, between countries, between ethnic groups, if things go on like this, the disputes will never end. When will it stop? So back in the times of Yao, Shun, and Yu, that's Shun, it seems that when he was a farmer, whatever little grain he harvested, he would try his best to give to others, to help as much as he could. In the end, his followers just kept increasing. So in our world, there are many ways to win people over, and it's not always about putting oneself at the center. Didn't we talk yesterday about being the leader of a group? If one is selfish and self-serving, that is a failing for a practitioner. Now let's talk about being a leader. Whether you are the ruler of a country or simply the head of a small group, if you truly have a very selfish and self-centered heart and are unwilling to yield, then in the end, you may still suffer losses. This is a very important teaching. Guide them with the system of rites and music, and the people will live in harmony. If we rely on the system of rites and music, because the old moral codes had a lot of etiquette, so if we consistently use rituals and music as a guide, then people will truly live in harmony. In fact, many people now have significant conflicts, disunity, and disharmony. The main reason we may not understand, according to the ancient saying, everyone, he has his own etiquette and manners. Your identity is different. As we mentioned before, aren't there 5 types of filial piety? A king has his own etiquette, and ministers have theirs. Professors have the etiquette of professors. If you understand and follow these etiquettes, then many problems below will naturally disappear. But nowadays, many people don't really understand them. For example, people in the business world, many of them think, I want to be Jack Ma, be Jack Ma. But it's fine for you to think that way. Your ideals are admirable. But in reality, how many people actually, like that old saying, a soldier who doesn't want to become a general is not a good soldier. Back in the 70s and 80s, there was this saying. Everyone wants to be the best. When we were in school, every student wanted to be number 1. If there were 55 students in a class, is it possible for everyone to be number 1? So sometimes people overestimate themselves, really. When we went to Sweden, we asked many people, what is your ideal in life? Just to be an ordinary person, that's good. They don't have a lot of desires. They're content with themselves. Many people here are the same. Recently, I've seen some, after exams, if they don't do well, they feel unhappy. I didn't do well. I didn't get first place, not even second. Many who get good grades tend to have higher expectations. And as for those who don't have good grades, but we should still work hard. We shouldn't be so miserable about it, right? Not everyone can truly become like that. So everyone possesses their own unique sense of proper etiquette. In ancient times, people really emphasized etiquette. Each person's manners are still different from one another. So we need to understand this. Look at the blessings and fortune of a king. Ordinary people like us don't have. So if each of us thinks, I want to be like a king, whether it's in terms of wealth, status, or power, that's just not possible. But everyone should still make an effort. However, when making an effort, don't go to extremes. Seeing a good person, you might think, I should become like that. There's a kind of jealousy mixed in, and you keep pushing yourself that way. In one sense, that's good, but in another, it's not so good. There are distinctions between high and low status, such differences. It's very important to understand this yourself. Show them what is favored and what is disliked, and the people will know what to avoid. So, by using this as guidance, you can distinguish what is good and what is not. Clearly, discerning right from wrong, if you truly have this wisdom, you'll know what is lawful and unlawful, what can be done and what cannot. If you guide the people in this way, then they will know how to make choices. They'll know this is not acceptable, but that is acceptable. So, he possesses this wisdom. Guiding people in this particular way is truly the most effective method. So we need to find some root causes. It's very important to identify that. If we don't find the root causes, many things can't be done well. In the past, Wei Zheng, a minister under Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty, when Wei Zheng died, the emperor felt as if he had lost his mirror, because Wei Zheng often pointed out his faults. Actually, for a wise ruler, he is happy when others point out his shortcomings. But for us, if someone often points out our faults, we might immediately fire them. Some rulers often can't tolerate or accept words that don't conform to their own views. They may often find such people disagreeable and even use various ways to warn or deal with them. However, the suggestions Wei Zheng gave were still very wise. Even when he pointed out negative things, he was very accurate. At that time, he said, if you want a tree to grow tall, you must strengthen its roots. That is to say, for a tree to grow, the most fundamental thing is to make its roots strong. Just like when planting trees in Larung now, the roots must not be disturbed. If the roots are shaken, constantly disturbed by yaks or people, then the tree definitely won't grow well at all. If you truly want a stream to flow far and wide, you must clear its source completely. He said that the most fundamental thing for water to flow continuously and smoothly is to clear its source. If the source is not properly cleared or unblocked, then the water simply won't flow. So whether it's any kind of education or anything good or bad, the route of making choices depends on your guide at the beginning. If the guidance is good, then what follows will be smooth, just like a river that flows continuously. It will be very, very good. So first of all, when it comes to making choices between good and bad, including those who study Buddhism, you should also understand what can and cannot be done. Listen to more teachings. This will be helpful for your own behavior in the future. Learn more, and you will come to understand. Otherwise, we might end up being, you could say, blind followers within Buddhism, which isn't good. Now, for the last point, he finally cited a scriptural reference. This is actually quite similar to some treatises in Tibetan Buddhism. How majestic is Master Yin! The entire populace keeps their gaze fixed upon you. Here means famous, extremely renowned, or very well known. Yin seems to have been a surname at the time. For example, Mr. Yin or Teacher Yin, that's what it means. And Minju Zhan means that everyone is watching you. I think this saying is very true. The renowned Mr. Yin, hello. You must pay attention to your own words and actions, otherwise everyone will always be watching you. If you make even a small mistake, everyone will be paying attention to it. So if you have even a little bit of fame or just a bit of a reputation, everyone is watching. But if someone isn't that famous or well known, people don't really pay much attention to what they do. So whether it's an ordinary ruler or any kind of public figure, people are still watching them. I think this saying applies to really many people today, like certain celebrities or some public officials. Whenever they do even the smallest thing, everyone is watching. People will say, oh, this is such and such celebrity, and they broke the rules. Everyone talks about what they did and how, especially now with all the internet spotlight shining on them. Under the spotlight, millions of eyes are watching their every move in the most minute detail. If they do even the slightest thing that doesn't follow the rules, it gets magnified by millions. Actually, sometimes people really are like this. It's also quite rare in today's modern society. This is something that I mentioned in my earliest translation of A Precious Treasury of Elegant Sayings. The masses always scrutinize the faults of the wise. Ordinary people are not treated this way. This was something I especially liked at the time. A lot of people are especially interested in the faults of those who are famous, wise, or capable, those who are successful or talented. These people's mistakes. They look for them in all sorts of ways. Normal people really wouldn't do such a thing at all. He told a parable. Looking for flaws in a jewel is like looking for flaws in a pearl. Who cares if there are cracks in the embers? Just like towards pearl, people are especially... For example, if we take out a precious coral or a beautiful agate, is there a visible crack or a significant flaw in it? He meticulously used a microscope to carefully observe it. But when it comes to ordinary wood, no one really cares. No matter what kind of cracks it has, people just don't pay attention. So if you're just an ordinary person, nobody cares, no matter what mistakes you make, even if you make 100 mistakes. But if you're an important figure or someone special, then everyone pays attention. Nowadays, some celebrities say if others slander me, it means I'm still useful. I'm so happy that people notice me. This way of thinking is actually correct. Sometimes, for example, some people nowadays get a little criticism online, just a few negative comments, and they feel really upset, wondering why this is happening to them. But actually, when people point out your faults, it shows they really care about you. It's like a precious pearl. If a pearl has the slightest flaw, everyone pays attention, saying there's a crack or something like that. Because people have high hopes for you and pay close attention to you. If you were just an ordinary person, a regular person in the world, then it wouldn't matter at all if you made some mistakes. So this is also a teaching that wise people in the past have given. Therefore, no matter what your own personal status or position is, in this current era, everyone should also pay very careful attention to their own words and actions when it is absolutely necessary, because everything that people of a higher status say and do will be watched by everyone below them. For example, if a high-ranking leader wears a special kind of hat, the people below will also go and buy that hat. And if a celebrity wears some famous brand of clothing, everyone will say, wow, this celebrity is wearing that brand, I want to buy it too. Actually, sometimes when I look at people, the very origin of humans is closely related to monkeys. These monkeys truly love to imitate. Even if they don't get to eat the fruit themselves when others are eating it, they'll just grab something at random and start rolling it up. So sometimes people are especially like this. Whatever their admired idol or the person they truly admire does, they will often imitate it. Even if that person eats a certain fruit, everyone will say, well, wow, we have to eat that too. Because their fans, the die-hard fans, go along with it and accept it. So what is this? It seems it's not just people in the East, people in the West are like this too. On the surface, it seems like Westerners aren't particularly like that. But in reality, for example, during the World Cup, if a famous and popular soccer player wears a certain brand of clothing, all the young people will immediately rush to buy out that particular brand's clothes. Especially when I went to some places the other day, I felt that people from both the East and the West basically don't seem to have their own opinions. Whatever others do, they'll follow suit. You see, it's the same here too. So Master Yin, who is so well known, whatever you do, people will be watching you closely and will certainly follow suit. So even within a relatively small circle here, for example, if the bureau chief does something, then everyone in the bureau will wear the same clothes just to please the chief. For instance, if he likes to eat zongzi, then today, isn't everyone eating zongzi together with the chief? How about that? It's the same among Buddhists as well. If our counselor likes to eat something, then we all eat it together, right? Isn't there a certain dish you like? But it was like this in ancient times too, and that's not a bad thing. People in both the East and the West are like this. We know what human beings are really like, and there's no targeting anyone here. We're not saying which is right or which is wrong, but this is just how we are. That's all for today.
Bandara Bandara